That's right, I'm not just stopping with USB-C. Not only do I want the superior port on future iPhones, today I'm advocating for why it should be one of the faster standards. Don't think we've seen this much in the Android world, but yes, I'm advocating as to why Thunderbolt should come to the iPhone, at least the Pros and USB-C in general. Let's begin. So you've heard the arguments countless times before. Everyone has switched to USB-C. Even Apple has switched to Type-C on nearly all of the iPads, most of the MacBooks. You have MagSafe now, but it didn't replace Type-C, so I still count it as like supporting the superior port. You know, Type-C can't do the 140 watt charging they wanted the new MacBook Pros to do, but you can still charge them with Type-C if you feel like it, which means on a trip, in a pinch, yes, you can still use one cable to charge your MacBook and your iPad. They brag about how great Type-C is for the iPad mini, so why can't they also brag about how great Type-C would be on the iPhone? Works with so many pre-existing accessories. That's why, for the record, I don't view it as the same thing from 30-pin to Lightning. There were tons of 30-pin accessories and 30-pin docks out there that Apple said, nah, none of these work anymore. You have to buy all new cables or new adapters because Lightning is the future, but no one had any Lightning cables. They didn't exist. That was like a brand new thing. Whereas switching to Type-C, this is not a brand new thing. It's something Apple's been showing off for years, even shipping iPhones with USB-C cables, so it's not like it would be a completely new standard everyone would have to get used to. And yes, of course, there are many Lightning accessories and dongles and CarPlay cables that everyone would have to buy adapters for. I think similar to the removal of the headphone jack, which was also very much used by a lot of people. You could easily just pop in a Lightning to USB-C adapter for those who really care about it. But end of the day, there's so many cables and there's so many accessories out there that could be made more simply if the iPhone had USB-C. So that argument we know, but I'm taking it a notch higher and advocating as to why not only should it get Type-C, with Thunderbolt there's actually more use cases that the iPhone could genuinely take advantage of. So the most common one that I've seen brought up a lot is the fact that ProRes is now on the Pro iPhones. And when you're recording at 4K, and I'm sure this will only increase with time, next year we'll probably get 4K at 60 ProRes, and that's going to be using 6 to 10 gigs per minute, maybe even more, of very large file sizes. And yes, ProRes on the iPhone does look pretty dang good. It gives you lots of color science, and many professionals are going to use it for that. So if you're advocating for professional use of the iPhone by including ProRes and having to write files that are going to take up this much space, it would save so much freaking time if you could actually import videos off of your iPhone to your Mac with a full-speed Thunderbolt connection. That would be much faster than trying to do all of this over the crappy Lightning speeds, which it's ironic we call it Lightning, but it's still USB 2.0, or over AirDrop, which is even slower than that. So if we're gonna be making file sizes this big on the iPhone, I'm sorry, your portless argument kind of falls apart. And also, I know many of you are like, well, Apple wants to go portless soon anyway. We've been saying this since 2017, okay? In a couple months, that will have been 5 years ago. So for 5 years, we keep saying, well, soon portless, well, soon portless. We've had MagSafe for a couple years now, and to me, it sounds like Apple is too nervous to go portless because honestly, it does not help their e-waste argument at all. You have to all buy into MagSafe now, which is not as accessible or as efficient as USB-C, and it's not going to be as easy to just include a Lightning to MagSafe adapter with every iPhone, because you can't charge an iPhone over MagSafe with a 5-watt brick, which is what most Lightning cables are attached to. You could charge an iPhone with a Lightning to USB-C adapter if Apple started mass producing those, and turn any Lightning charger or any Lightning accessory into a USB-C accessory. Would not be very complicated, or people can just use the USB-C cables that they already have, which there are far more USB-C cables than there are MagSafe pucks, and it will probably always remain that way. So if you're gonna pitch it as a pro tool, Thunderbolt makes a lot of sense in that regard. Secondly, if you want to showcase the high bitrate, high dynamic range performance of the iPhone, and you plug it in via Thunderbolt to a high resolution XDR monitor, whether it's the Pro display or whether it's some HDR TV, you would have far less latency with the Thunderbolt ports, as well as being able to output a much cleaner image. So you can't really cast that much over Lightning because you're limited by the data speeds. And because the iPhone has such a great camera, and Apple loves their Pro Display XDR demos, and they love the great extreme dynamic range the iPhone offers, allowing these two products to work together and have full speed connection with each other makes tons of sense to me. Like, if you're gonna put Thunderbolt on the iPad for $800, granted, yes, that has the M1 chip, and the iPhone I'm talking about has at least the A6 A16 chip, I think it could sustain at least one Thunderbolt connection. You know, it doesn't have to sustain anything else. We know the M1 chip on its own can support 2 Thunderbolt connections and a headphone jack like it does on the MacBook Air. So I'm saying, you know, slightly scaled down, not as powerful as the M1, but I'm sure the A16 chip will probably be on the 4 nanometer architecture and have the capability of sustaining Thunderbolt connections. You could have very fast data speed for factory restores and backups and that type of thing, faster imports for videos that are taking up more and more space. Basically, my logic is if you want to sell 1 terabyte iPhones, then a Thunderbolt iPhone isn't really that crazy at the end of the day. That's a lot of data that you may be backing up manually or offloading files onto. Now, there's another example that may sound a little bit crazy, but I'm willing to go crazy because to me, Thunderbolt could allow for this so much. The A16 chip, because it's on this new fabrication process, may result in a leaps and bounds better improvement over the A15 chip. Maybe even getting close, not surpassing, but getting close to the performance of the M1. And if you start nearing that type of performance, I genuinely think Apple could make their own version of Samsung DeX. You could have Thunderbolt connectors, I'm sure Apple could sell like these for $100 or $200, that connect to an external monitor, whether you have HDMI or USB-C on the back of these docks, but they have a Thunderbolt connection that you plug your iPhone into, and now your iPhone, because it has Bluetooth, because it'll have the A16 chip or better, and it has a Thunderbolt connection, could power an entire external monitor with a really high resolution and a lot of data being showcased, and you could connect a keyboard and mouse, and boom, macOS could be bootable off of the iPhone for people who want a bigger display, and your iPhone can just sit there being iOS, but it could be powering this Mac-like experience, and you could get like the most tiniest Mac Mini you can imagine. Instead of a little box, you just have an iPhone. And sure, the thermals and performance won't be as crazy good as it is on the M1 MacBook Air, but for the basics, people who just wanted a nice little desktop setup and they wanted to access a lot of files that were already on their iPhone, they can just dock it there and the latency will be low. I know you don't necessarily need a Thunderbolt port to maintain these things, but the iPhone could get power and transfer a crap ton of data up to that display, and it could output at a high resolution, high frame rate even, if Apple wants to release the Pro Display XDR with 120 hertz, you know, the first Pro Display with Pro Motion. You could actually have Apple DeX, in my view, with Thunderbolt, and you could upsell customers on this being a Pro feature. I'm sure some of you are saying, technically you could do that with Lightning if you did this, whatever. Apple can say, to reach our Apple DeX standards, we require a Thunderbolt connection and at least an A16 chip on the iPhone for this to work. But imagine just plugging into any external monitor with that dock, and now it's a Mac, and for your FaceTime camera, you can still fall back to the iPhone. It's being propped up there. You could unlock your Mac with your iPhone via Face ID. You don't need a biometric on this external monitor, and the iPhone can be your microphone. There's so much you could do with the iPhone that you could upsell people on, be like, just buy this $1,000 iPhone and then this $200 dock, and then partner that with our $2,000 monitor, and now you have kind of a super mobile macOS experience that just fits in your pocket, and then when you take it to any one of your numerous desks, you take all your files with you, especially if we're going to have CPUs and GPUs getting even faster than the A15 chip, which I think is kind of maxing out the capability of what a phone needs that type of performance for. We could utilize that on larger displays and take advantage of that extra multitasking now that iPhones have 6 gigs of RAM, perhaps in the future they'll hit 8 gigs of RAM or more. Apple could upsell people or try to encourage you to get the 512 gig or 1 terabyte iPhone because that will come with more gigs of RAM. This is exactly what Apple does with the iPad Pros, although there's very little reason to take advantage of that extra RAM on the iPad. If there was a dual boot option on the iPhone with a specific hardware attachment that you have to buy to access that, you probably wouldn't be cannibalizing too many Mac sales because it's not a laptop. And the desktops this is competing with, it wouldn't be as fast as, it wouldn't be as capable as a Mac Mini or an iMac, but it would cover the basics for enough people and it would encourage them to spend more money on their next iPhone purchase, which is I think what Apple wants at the end of the day, right? So unlocking your Mac with Face ID, using the built-in cameras for FaceTime, using the microphones for FaceTime, and using it for light web browsing, iMessage texts, or even some light productivity apps I'm sure would work off of the iPhone. All of this could be done and more with Thunderbolt coming to the iPhone, but no, right? Because Grandma wants to keep using her 8-year-old Lightning port, and we can't inconvenience Meredith, and because Meredith needs Lightning, we're just gonna keep Lightning Lightning on the iPhone forever, right? Because Apple's too scared to go portless because they're afraid of the backlash in the e-waste, and they're too hesitant to go with USB-C, even though Apple helped design it, and there's all these great things they could do with it, and they've bragged about how great it is on the Mac and the iPad, where you could be so much closer to one cable being able to charge all of your stuff in the ecosystem. But no, it's all about Meredith. She needs her Lightning port. How ridiculous does that sound to you? Huh? Okay, like, do you want to go portless and just say goodbye to all of these cool features? We can do that too. You know, I keep using MagSafe for everything, but I admit I would probably use a Thunderbolt port on my iPhone if it was there, but if it's Lightning, it might as well just not even be there. I can do AirDrop pretty quick anyway. Have any disagreements or wrong opinions you want to shine my way? Go ahead, leave them in the comments below, but they're all wrong. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you in the next one. Tim, you better watch this. Jeez.